a quick introduction, who I am, where I come from, and why I'm here. I spent 32 years plus with the Food and Drug Administration, my first 12 years as a field investigator. My educational background is biomedical engineering, so as you might expect, I worked a lot in the medical device area. After 12 years, I moved over into compliance, where I served as a compliance officer for 20 plus years. If you want to know the difference there, you know, our FDA's investigators, inspectors, those are the folks out doing inspections, writing 483s, collecting exhibits, those sorts of things. And then all that material then in the agency then goes over to a person like a compliance officer or a center compliance officer, where they decide whether or not to pursue some sort of enforcement or advisory action and what that action should be. So I had the pleasure when I was with FDA of being able to work on both as an investigator and as a compliance officer. One, you know, interesting exercise. You can probably do this as we go along here today. I have retired from the agency, but I still, on occasion, slip up and speak as though I still work there. I don't. Okay. I think what happened there, it's like this. Any Star Trek fans out there will understand this. I think if you work for FDA for long enough, I think what happens is you end up kind of being assimilated, you know, as like the Borg, you know. So there are a couple of Star Trek fans out here who understand what I'm talking about. So here's what I do now. I'm living the dream. I'm telling you, I am really living the dream. I got out, I'm 58 years old. I got out of FDA relatively young, and that's allowed me now to do some other stuff that I really wanted to do. What is that other stuff? I work as a consultant in the device industry. Primarily, the work that I do now is for Mark at Gardner Law. The other thing I do, I teach. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of St. Thomas. With two other folks, we teach the regulatory submissions course in the School of Engineering over there. The other thing I do, and actually this probably takes more time than anything else that I do right now, I coach running. I coach track and field and cross country at Little Prescott High School, which is a neat little town down, just right down the river here, where the St. Croix and the Mississippi come together. That's Prescott. So I coach track and field and cross country there. I achieve, and I have to share this. This isn't going to help us get back on track, but I still have to share it. And I achieved another lifelong dream here. A few weeks ago, when I purchased with a business partner half a share in a standardbred racehorse. And that standardbred racehorse is, if all goes as planned, scheduled to be entered and race up at Running Aces here next week. The horse's name is Beachy Boy Hill. So if you happen to be up there, if you're a fan of racing, cheer for Beachy Boy. Somebody asked me, they said, Beachy, what kind of horse you got? I said, well, I got a standardbred. They said, oh, those are the kind that pull the chariots, right? I said, right, exactly. I didn't try to correct him. I said, exactly. It's just like Ben-Hur. It's just exactly like Ben-Hur. Okay, so how to survive an FDA inspection. I get a kick out of that term, survive, too. Frankly, if I had made the title, I think I would have changed it a little bit. I mean, this kind of gives the impression that they're unpleasant. Thank you. That engaging with FDA is some sort of survival exercise, like you're with Bear Grylls and you're out and eating bugs and drinking your own urine, trying to get through some terrible experience. So I'm happy to do this kind of talk because I think what it does is it helps dispel some of those perceptions, some of those stereotypes about FDA and in particular FDA investigators. And that's one of the reasons why I take the time to actually give a little bit of personal background, maybe more than you wanted to hear, so that you would come away from here today with the understanding that FDA people are people too. They are, and they, like you, are subject to anxiety and angst and worry and wonder and all the stuff that is associated with working in the industry that we are all working in. The healthcare products industry, and just keep in mind that FDA has an agency, and the people who work in FDA share the same goals that you folks do. That being to have safe and effective medical products on the market. So they empathize with you, and likewise, I would hope that you empathize with them. So today, now in a Q&A format, We're going to discuss some common characteristics of FDA inspections, including how to prepare, how to communicate effectively with agency representatives, how to avoid some common pitfalls, and how to address compliance issues. You will note, I know most people here, it seems, are from the medical device industry, but a lot, conceptually anyway, a lot of what I'm about to talk about does apply to all FDA commodities, even foods, biologics, veterinary products, and the like. So there's a little bit for everybody here. Poll. How many of you have participated in an FDA inspection? Show of hands. So a significant number here in the audience have. What do we got online?
Online, it's about 65% have.
About 65%. Okay, that was pretty close to what we have here. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. That means that some people haven't. So I hope that some of the material that I covered today will help the people who haven't to be prepared for that. And those who already have, I'll be very curious as we go along here to find out whether or not your experience with the agency and its investigators is consistent with that which I'm about to portray here. And if it's not, if it hasn't been, if you take some issue with anything that I'm about to present, feel free to ask a question or tell me I'm wrong and explain why. After 32 years with FDA, believe me, I have been told a number of times that I'm wrong or on the wrong side of an issue or need to do something different. So over the years, I've developed a pretty thick skin and some broad shoulders for dealing with that. So don't be shy here today. Here is the perception that I want to dispel, the stereotype that I'd like to get rid of. This picture here, the snarling guard dog with the FDA collar and that overwrite there, intimidated by FDA inspections, was real. About 25 years ago, that was in a magazine. And I can't remember whether the ad was by a law firm or a consulting firm or what, but they were obviously kind of trying to drum up business, I thought, in order for folks who worked in industry to hire them to help them through the FDA inspection process. Before we jump into the kind of the who's, what's, where's, when, whys, and how's of FDA inspections, let's take a moment here to just talk about some pandemic-related inspection things. During the pandemic, FDA adapted their operations for inspections and investigations to the point that even what they term mission-critical type work was only being conducted on a case-by-case basis. And in some cases, the agency went to kind of new and innovative approaches to get the information that they needed in order to do their jobs. That would include like remote interactive evaluations. Those were done in the drug manufacturing and bioresearch monitoring areas. And I really think that now that the FDA has gone to the trouble of working those out and understanding the benefits to that, that we might continue to see that as time goes on, even when the pandemic finally subsides, if it ever subsides, of course. So a couple other kind of key facts just to give you an idea of what happened in FDA with inspections. In fiscal 19, FDA had planned approximately 18,000 inspections and completed 94% of those. Then comes the pandemic, and in FY 20, the nearly 21,000 planned inspections were accomplished at only a 61% rate. So, kind of goes without saying that in fiscals 21 and 22, FDA has been and is playing catch-up. I included there in your materials a link to some very, very good information, some comprehensive information involving kind of the roadmap for FDA inspectional oversight. And you can even go there and see for all the commodities that FDA regulates, their definitions of what constitutes mission-critical work, high-priority work, and low-priority work. And you can kind of see what fits where on the scale. Okay, so who does FDA inspect? Well, they inspect manufacturers of finished devices, including but not limited to contract manufacturers, spec developers, and contract sterilizers. Who conducts inspections? Well, usually you're going to see one or two investigators from a local FDA office, okay? On occasion, though, you might see a representative from the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, or if you're in the drug area, a similar representative from CDER, the Center for Drug Evaluation. You might also see a national expert. FDA has a number of those on staff, or an FDA investigator from a neighboring district, or a state official or a local official who, kind of shares the responsibility with FDA to regulate whatever industry we're talking about here. What types of inspections are conducted by FDA? Well, they conduct a number of routine surveillance inspections. In other words, quality system, GMP type work. Inspections are done in the form of pre-approval work to support the approval of a PMA, or in some cases, a 510K. The agency does post-approval inspections too. After a PMA is approved, the agency routinely sends an investigator out to kind of see how things are going in those first few months following the introduction of a new device. Other types of inspections, the agency goes out routinely to cover complaints. Those complaints can be from a number of different sources. Consumer, industry type complaints are pretty common in the agency, and some of the most interesting ones that I saw when I was working there came from informants. In other words, folks who work right in the companies that we were getting ready to inspect. That situation where somebody says, you can kind of picture it, they're at their desk, they say, I'm fed up, I can't take this anymore, I'm going to call the FDA. And a lot of times that's what they do, and then the agency evaluates the information that's provided and decides whether or not to do a specific follow-up to the issues that have been reported. FDA also does inspections to follow up recalls, or field corrective actions, or if you want to go to the 21 CFR 806 definition, corrections and removals, right? Corrections and removals, synonymous with the term recall. FDA does special assignments and investigations, and know too that when they're doing inspections, FDA can collect samples, and those samples can be of the products the FDA regulated products that are produced in the facility, or just documents that demonstrate the production of those FDA regulated products. Now, why does FDA do inspections? Well, they're required by law to do inspections. Some people don't know that about FDA as a government agency. They're subject to rules and regulations and law as well, just like industry is. And there was a time when FDA was required by law to inspect every medical device manufacturer every 2 years. Well, guess what? Yeah, you laugh. That didn't happen. For pretty obvious reasons. The agency just didn't have the resources to allow them to get around to all of those companies that were making medical devices. So that's changed a little bit, and I think I have a slide coming up here that'll explain how that's changed. Why else does FDA do inspections? Well, they do it to evaluate compliance with the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and any related regulations. And they do it to collect information or evidence for the lawyers out there, evidence that can be used to support regulatory action or enforcement action, if you want to call it that, if that becomes necessary. FDA is an agency that really hopes to achieve as much compliance as possible in a voluntary manner, and generally that happens. I think the industry and the agency are pretty good at that whole idea of voluntary compliance. But when that doesn't happen, then there are a number of different regulatory and enforcement tools that are available, starting with advisory actions like warning letters and untitled letters, moving on then to enforcement actions like seizures and injunctions and civil money penalties, and in the worst of the worst cases, even some criminal prosecutions. Note that you may say, well, I know how to survive an FDA inspection. I just won't let them in the door. Not a good idea. Okay, really not a good idea, because that act in and of itself, to refuse inspection from FDA, is a prohibited act and would make you subject to civil or criminal action. When are inspections done? Well, now, rather than the old, what I said, the statute required before, the 2-year thing, now inspections are done on a risk-based inspection schedule. And I believe that's even been put into statute, that the agency is required to assess risk in deciding how they use their resources. Much of the work that the agency does, especially right now in the pandemic era, is work that is described as for cause. And the types of for cause work that's done by the agency would include a follow-up to observations from previous inspections. If you have a recall, a correction or removal type action, complaints, adverse event reports. If there are industry-wide issues, that'll cause the agency to go out and inspect not just one company, but perhaps everybody who's involved in an industry. The one that always sticks in my mind is years and years ago, I don't know if you remember this or not, but and it actually led to the development of a standard in this area, but we had a number of cases where lead wires for medical devices were being plugged right into receptacles, plugged right into AC power receptacles, and a number of folks were hurt, and I believe there were even some deaths associated with that. So in that case, I remember the agency going out and inspecting every company that made any sort of product that could potentially be misused. Note that sometimes the agency will reveal some details about why they're there to do these for cause inspections, but in other cases they won't. And you can probably guess, the types in what leads to that approach by the agency. Sometimes there's nothing to hide. The issues that are to be covered are very clear, but other times, in order to respect, the confidentiality, for instance, of folks who came to the agency with information, the agency will be a little bit more coy, cryptic, and in some cases not say anything about exactly why they're there. And what's going to be covered during a routine quality system inspection? Well, it's like you'd expect. Registration and all the stuff, all the general controls that companies that make medical devices need to comply with. Registration and listing, pre-market, quality system, medical device reporting, device tracking. If you make a product that's subject to device tracking, the agency will cover that. Any corrections and removals, and then kind of other stuff as needed. How are inspections conducted? Well, FDA doesn't do a very good job of keeping secrets in this area, nor do they want to. Okay, they're going to do inspections. They've gone on record. It's their written procedures for doing that are published, and you can find them. You can find the quality system inspection technique, which is the top-down system-oriented way of doing inspections that the agency does right now, as opposed to what was done in what I like to refer to as the good old days. When FDA investigations kind of started with, we'd go to the firm, we'd issue our credentials. Hi, I'm Tim Phillips. I'm with the Food and Drug Administration. I'm here to do an inspection. May I see your complaint file and all the MDRs that you've filed? And oh, by the way, if you've conducted any recalls, I want to know about those too. That's the way FDA did inspections at the time when I joined the agency back in the late 1980s. And even a little bit into the 90s. But at some point in there, the agency evolved and started doing inspections from a more top-down, systems-oriented manner.
We do have a question online.
Sure.
So Theranos, the debunked blood test company, passed an FDA inspection by hiding the existence of a certain room that held their technology. How often do unethical companies get away with this? And do these companies eventually get caught before causing extensive harm?
Wow. I didn't know that about Theranos. That's what they did. They very definitely hid information from the agency that, had the agency been aware of it, that all might have turned out quite differently.
Yep.
How often does that happen? I don't know. I really don't know. But my impression is that it doesn't happen very often. Thank goodness. Right? My impression is that by and large, up in the high 90% of the companies that FDA deals with are on the up and up. They're straightforward with the agency. They have noble goals, great intentions. They do everything they can to produce safe and effective medical products. That's my impression. Do I have metrics to support it? No, I don't. Sorry. But that said, in my 32 years, you'd be surprised to know that no less than 5 times I was involved in cases, either as an investigator or as a compliance officer, where companies ended up subject to criminal type action and penalties because they either lied to or withheld information from the agency. And I always kind of felt like, one guy in a 32-year career to see that 5 times, that was too many, I thought. I mean, I was, in a couple of those cases, I was stunned. I was shocked to know that had happened. But it does happen, and when it does happen in those cases, because you're all consumers too, right? I mean, you work in the industry, and I worked in the industry as a regulator, but we're all consumers. And so, we all want to see good products out there. We all, when it's necessary, want to see a strong FDA that's good at what they do. So I hope that got to the question. Where will investigators look during an inspection? Well, a lot of times inspections start with a kind of a broad-based facility walkthrough, so the investigator can just kind of get the lay of the land and see what's out there. Then, as the inspection proceeds, they may do more detailed inspections of manufacturing and quality control operations that are particularly interesting, or perhaps have been the subject of some issues. But know that it's not uncommon for FDA inspections to be spent. A significant amount of time of the FDA inspection is spent in a boardroom reviewing GMP required records. So don't be surprised by that. What should you do to get ready for an FDA inspection? First and foremost, you know what you got to do? You got to be compliant. Okay, because if you're not compliant, if you got a lot of quality system issues that are either right out there or percolating right under the surface, no amount of being good at the other things that I'm going to recommend here is going to save you, or I'd be lucky if it saved you. Okay, having a good contact person to coordinate the inspection is a very good communicator, and while they might not know where to find everything in the firm, they know who to find who can find everything in the firm and facilitate a good inspection. Having that isn't going to save you if you're not compliant. Planning for the situation when quote everybody who knows anything is gone. In other words, having a plan A and a plan B, and in some cases even a plan C, that's not going to save you either if you're non-compliant. But that quote right there, I'll tell you a little bit more about that. I went out one day to do an inspection, drove all the way out into a small town in Wisconsin, and was ready to do the work. Parking lot's full, inspection. I'm in the facility, it's loud. There's a receptionist behind the counter, and I did my thing. Hi, I'm Tim Phillips with the Food and Drug Administration. I'm here to do an inspection. And she said to me, "Oh, I'm sorry, that won't be possible today. Everybody who knows anything is gone." And I said, "Well, really, because, the parking lot's full and the plant's obviously running, so that wasn't really the case." I mean, what happened there, it was pretty clear that the people who they would have preferred to deal with the FDA, they were gone. They were off-site for some reason. But no, thankfully for all of us, there were folks there who knew enough about the operations that they were able to help me that day. I think I may have already mentioned this. So study and understand, this all goes to the being compliant thing. Registration, listing, product approvals, GMPs, adverse event reporting, all of that. Just be ready for that, because I like to tell people it's not really a question of if FDA is going to show up. It's just a question of when. Okay. And think about this. Think about, too, as you put together your planning for FDA work, what are you going to do to provide accommodations for the FDA? What are you going to do about giving them a certain degree of privacy? Should they request it just to review documents? In some cases, our folks, I did it once right there. Our folks, like I still work there. FDA folks will want a little bit of privacy, if no other reason than just to allow them, to review materials without having 6-8 sets of eyes staring at them while they're doing it. Or the one that gets me, this is a pet peeve of mine. Some companies wouldn't even let you go to the bathroom alone. And I knew they were following me there because he didn't have to go. He just watched. And I mean, that's a little over the top. I think that's a little over the top. But I mean, I understand some companies have that policy and it's strict and right down to that level. But I don't know what they think is going to happen. I don't think you're going to conduct an interview while you're at the urinal with somebody. I don't know. But anyway, think about how you're going to handle that. If you can only remember one thing from the material that I present today, I'd like for you to remember what's on this slide. And it's the concept of TLAST, which was taught to me by a lawyer who did some of our training in FDA, in Food and Drug Law and Evidence Development. It's a concept that can be applied to how to testify in a court of law, right? And I understand FDA inspections are not, they're not an equivalent to testifying in a court of law. They're different, but they do have enough parallels that I think this applies. For anybody want to take a crack at this acronym and what the first T is? Truth. Very good. Tell the truth. Absolutely, under every circumstance, tell the truth. No GMP violation, no adverse event report, no recall, no nothing is serious enough, awful enough, that it warrants you telling a lie or withholding information from the government about it. That act in and of itself, again, you start talking, like refusing inspection, that act in and of itself is I believe, it's a felony. I believe under Title 18. Lawyers, the L. Listen to questions, and I'll go one step further. Make sure you understand the question before you try to answer it. You hear that old saying, there's no such thing as a dumb question? That's wrong. There are dumb questions, and I know because I asked some of them when I was out doing that work. I mean, we deal in a highly technical environment, right? And sometimes it's hard to even characterize exactly what it is you want to know, So if that comes up, if the investigator asks a question that's confusing or doesn't make any sense, seek some clarification and try to get to exactly what it is that the investigator wants to know, so that you can answer the question, clearly and concisely. What do you think the S might be here? This is another good one, I think. This trips people up a lot. What's the S? Come on, lawyers who are litigators, you got to know this. Who said stop? Whoever said stop got it right. Stop after you've answered, right? Okay, and I'll just give you an example of kind of what can happen with people who don't stop. You want to do a role play with me? Yeah, you want to do a role play? Sure. Do you have a program in? Do you have a program in house for calibrating your equipment?
Yes.
You do. Is your calibration program, has that been reduced to policy and procedure documents?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can you tell me what those are? And in fact, could I see copies of them?
Absolutely.
Okay, you're good. You're good. You're good. And I'll do the other side. I'll do the one you really want to avoid. If I said, do you have a program in house for calibration? And the answer was, yes, we do. That's the responsibility of Frank over in maintenance. But old Frank, you know what? He's got hemorrhoids like you've never seen before right now. He missed the last month of work. And you know what? While he was gone, we had 3 pieces of equipment fall out of calibration. Don't worry, investigator, we got it under control. Nothing to worry about. Carry on, That's what happens if you don't stop, okay? Oh, shoot. Itchy trigger finger there. That's how important the T is to this, okay? It bookends this. It's the first and the last thing that I want you to remember in how to deal with government regulators. Let's see. Now, what if you lie to the FDA during an inspection or in a pre-market submission? Well, guess what? You might have an opportunity to meet one of their criminal investigators. Because FDA has those, okay? FDA has folks who are there, that's their job, is to do investigations in situations where there has been or there's a heavy-duty suspicion that a criminal act has been committed, and know that that Office of Criminal Investigation works very closely with the Department of Justice, who handles all of FDA's civil and criminal litigation. On a lighter note here, let's talk about some things that kind of the whole idea of bribery, I guess. I mean, and whether or not you can offer these sorts of things to the investigator without being suspected of trying to bribe them or influence their decisions. How about a cup of coffee? Show of hands, do you think that's okay? Holy cow, I don't want to inspect some of you people's firms. Not even a cup of coffee? Coffee and a donut? My answer is yes. Coffee and donuts fine. Good donuts, please. Good. Bagels would be good too. Bagel would be all right. How about one of your company pens? They don't have one to use? Yeah, yeah, that's the example that I like to give. If the investigator's in your firm, it's a Friday afternoon, it's 4 o'clock, and they're writing away furiously, and all of a sudden their pen runs out, and they don't have another one, right? And everybody's ready to go, right? It's the weekend. We want to get to the cabin, get going on the weekend. And you have a box full of pens. They cost 3.7 cents a piece, right? They have your company's logo on them, right? Flip it to the investigator, let them get the job done and get out of there, right? That's probably okay. Nobody's probably going to get in trouble for that. If on the other hand you hand them an engraved cross pen that has, oh, by the way, we thought you'd like this. We've got your name on it too. We've so enjoyed our interactions with you over the years that we want you to take this just as a memento of your visit here. That certainly is a problem. How about dinner? No, that's right. You're right. Dinners are off limits, and that's actually specified in a regulation. I was going to cite the regulation. I forgot to get it in the materials here. But yeah, dinners are a no-no. FDA representatives will always try to pay their own way on dinners. Ticket to a Timberwolves game. No, yeah, the answer is no. Even like when the Timberwolves were terrible and you couldn't give the tickets away, or they fell under the actual regulatory limit, because there is that regulation that I forgot to cite here actually has a number. It's $25 or something like that, and no more than 3 times over the course of a year. Don't quote me on it. Just go look it up. But that's another one that just any appearance that you're trying to gain an advantage or give somebody something that they're not entitled to should be avoided, both for the sake of industry and for the sake of FDA. So yeah, here's the textbook answers. Yeah, a cup of coffee's fine. Coffee and a donut's fine. That's a modest item of refreshment. A bottle of water, something like that. That's okay. That's not going to get you in any trouble. One of your company pens, that's a maybe. Dinner, no. And let's not go to Timberwolves games. Is it okay to ask the investigator questions during the inspection? My answer there is yes, absolutely. And in fact, I would encourage it. I would encourage you to seek feedback on how the inspection is going if you're not getting that from the investigator. Seek that feedback. I can tell you from having been involved in FDA's internal training programs, both at the local and national level, we teach, is that wrong? That would be wrong too. I used to. When I was with the agency, teach our folks to, at minimum, at the end of each day, give a wrap-up for how the inspection is going, what they found, whether there's anything they're concerned about. Especially things that might end up on a 483 or might end up being discussed at length in a report that could lead to some sort of action. Is it okay to argue? This is a trick question. I'll just tell you right out. It's a trick question. Is it okay to argue? It's not okay to have a knockdown screaming match with the FDA representative. That's not okay. That's not good. But it is okay to have an argument with them if that argument is productive, it's on point, and it's constructive, and it's trying just to establish the matters of fact that you need to establish. If you get the sense that the investigator has completely gotten the wrong impression about something, or they have mischaracterized something, don't be afraid to bring that to their attention and talk about it. Just do it in a polite, courteous, constructive way. What parts of the GMPs do you need to be really good at? Well, all of them, of course, but the ones that were my favorite and continue to be my favorite, because of course I continue to work in this industry, are the ones that relate to quality issues. Okay. You've gone a long ways, and the FDA's vision of you, the FDA's the picture that you paint for the FDA will be at its best if you are a company that sincerely goes about looking for quality system issues, detecting that stuff, getting them accurately defined and bracketed, and getting things corrected. What's 483? Well, that's the form that the investigator leaves. That too is required by law. That objectionable conditions, and it's the form used to report objectionable conditions and practices that an investigator observes during an inspection, and that whole thing, issuing a written notice of that, is required by law. What does and doesn't go on the 483? Well, for device inspections, GMPs, adverse event reporting, observations involving recall deviations go on the 483. Stuff that doesn't, registration and listing, pre-market and labeling. Those things on the right side that don't go on the 483, it's not that they're not important, they are important, but the reason that field investigators have not been given the kind of the authorization, so to speak, to write them on a 483 is because those are issues that by and large are handled by the folks in the centers. Okay, so like the Centers for Devices and Radiological Health are the ones who ultimately determine whether or not labeling is in compliance or not. Okay. Are you required to respond in writing to a 483? How many people think, yes, you are, you get a 483 from the government, you got to send in a response? Yes, how many? No. One taker? Yeah, you're wrong. Sorry. I know it's weird. It's really weird. You're not required by law to respond at all, but you should. And that response should be prompt. How prompt? Well, within 15 days. And there's the address of where you should send it. What does that get you? What does it get you? Well, the agency has gone on record to say if you promptly respond to a 483, then we assure you that we will review and consider your response before we do anything. That anything, of course, might be an advisory action, or in some cases it might be if the agency is contemplating taking some sort of enforcement action. How does FDA inform of the outcome of inspection? Well, now a copy of the establishment inspection report is sent to the company that was inspected when that investigation or inspection has been determined to be closed. And closed is defined in that regulation that I cited right there. This is a lot better way of dealing with things than the agency used to back in my early days. In my early days, you'd answer that question with, well, you know, no news is good news. You know, and boy, that people didn't like that. They really didn't like that answer. And I didn't like to give it either, really, because I didn't think it was really very fair. Just kind of leaving people hanging as to whether or not you know, things were good, bad, or indifferent. Number two, poll number two. If you've participated in an FDA inspection, was your experience consistent with the material that I just presented? And if not, I'd love to hear more about it. Even though I've contributed to the problem. Add this to the process deviation.
Poll is still running. We'll give it a few moments.
Okay, anybody here? Yeah, go ahead.
So I had, when you were talking about how it's changed in the early days,
Mm-hmm.
my first experience was at the U of M with the ALG program.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you know that one.
I do.
I do.
Can you guys repeat the question?
Sure.
Yep. So the question was, is the speaker's presentation consistent with your experience with an FDA inspection?
Sure. Sure.
You want to give her a mic?
Like a mic, that'd be great. And just for the room, I moved from California here. I took a job at the ALG as quality assurance manager, and I've been there 2 months when FDA walked in and shut the program down for years and years of non-compliance, which was hysterical. But 5 inspectors coming in for minor, teeny, like this timer's out of calibration. And then 20-something pages of clinical violations that had occurred in the 80s. And it was so adversarial that when John Najarian sat in the room and said, don't you know who I am? I'm the greatest transplant surgeon in the world. And the FDA said, you're done. You're closed. That's it. And that was my first inspection after 2 months just entering this industry, which was very, very funny. And a second one was having FDA show up, 97, a component plant, to inspect us. They said, we're not a finished device manufacturer. I was on crutches. I'd just broken my leg. And everybody who knew anything, senior people, were out of the office. I'm like, well, let's gown up and I'll find a way to hop into but I don't think you're supposed to be here. And thankfully, things had changed and the inspector was really great about it. But,
Good.
But other ones I've been in have been pretty much like clockwork, which is really good. So there has been a big mind shift.
Good.
Just funny, but yeah, that's introductions to inspection with the ALG one was, whoa, this is fun.
Yeah, that was a real. I wasn't involved in that case, but I'm aware of kind of the history there, and ultimately that ended up in a criminal prosecution, I believe, but when he was found, he was found innocent, I believe, right?
Yeah, it was very.
I don't know, I shouldn't even talk, I shouldn't even talk about that unless I got the facts in front of me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question about foreign manufacturers and pre-approval inspections, and if anybody knows anything about how that's changed during COVID, or there's anything going on there.
Yes, the agency is back doing foreign inspections. I don't know that they're doing as many as they were before, but that was one area that they really fell quite far behind in, and so they're playing catch up there. Yep.
We've had several that were in the past, I would say in the past 3 years, even through COVID, where they picked up towards the end where things got a little bit later. And I would say they're very similar to what you've described in this experience. And one place we tend to get tripped up is we don't have on-site catering. And so lunch is usually a question. And so when we're doing a front room, back room setup and we have a large catering order for lunch coming in, the challenge is always then if the inspector wants to stay on site and have lunch brought in, we have to add that lunch order usually to the big catering order and breaking out a separate receipt for them. And it's very challenging.
Yeah.
But I will say we've had also a pre-approval inspection for biologic product, and it was a very different experience from what was described. It was 5 inspectors and one that was probably on their first inspection and tossing papers off the table, and
Really?
and then the one tricky auditor, right, that would kind of trail behind the rest on a tour and be looking at very different things. So kind of a mixed bag.
Okay, thank you. No more? We good?
No more questions. And online, just to close out, it was about 73% said yes, they agreed with this.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm not going to make excuses for FDA's folks who don't do it the way that I kind of would prefer that they do. I can't do I can't make I don't know the stories. I can't. But I can tell you, having been involved with the agency for as long as I was, and being involved in the training programs, kind of the bottom line was we encouraged the investigators to be to always, of course, be courteous, be straightforward, don't be heavy-handed, don't be overbearing, and that kind of the bottom line was I always said, there's no reason why when we do this job, the investigator job, that we should be making enemies when we're out there, because our goals are very, very similar. We just get at those goals from a different angle. So.
I have a couple of questions online
Sure.
too. So one comment is, we always escort investigators. We had an investigator sneak out of a bathroom and go onto the production floor.
Really? Wow. That's not there's no chapter on that in the FDA's training program, I can tell you that.
And then Dr. Najarian was acquitted of all criminal charges.
Acquitted, okay, yeah, that's, okay, good. Whoever provided that, thank you.
Yep, that was Howard Root, thank you, and he wants everyone to remember that for now.
Okay.
And then the last one is, have on-site inspections been reduced for a company with MD-SAP certifications?
I'm sorry, can you do that one again?
Have on-site inspections been reduced for companies with MD-SAP certifications?
Yes, I believe they have. The inspections that are conducted according to MD-SAP would, in essence, cause FDA to take those companies off of their schedule for regular coverage. At least that's the way it was at the time I left. Okay, thanks everybody.